So far, we've talked about ways to drastically reduce energy use in cities and towns, how to provide good, nutritious food to everyone, and how to stop things from ending up in the landfill and getting it to people who might actually need it, or people who would have paid for a new one to be built and now don't have to. But what about the stuff that no one wants? Stuff that is not good but contains a lot of raw materials that just require work. The next 3 videos are going to involve more hands-on and currently more hobbyist-based solarpunk, that being upcycling, free and open source software, and right to repair. In the 1950s to 70s in the US, people had hobbies. They helped bring people together in a community, or could even contribute to science, such as citizen science, if that was your passion. Now we have side hustles, and our hobbies should make money or at least pay for themselves. Hobbies are wonderful and have so many non-monetary benefits, but we live in an age where money is everything, so we must constantly hustle. Hobbies can entertain, bring people together, reduce consumption, provide common good for the community. But even more than that, hobbies can allow for rest and a feeling of sense of accomplishment, a feeling that is many times difficult when you're seeing only one section of a long supply chain and workflow, something which Marx called alienation. Starting from scratch and finishing a piece you're proud of has a massive psychological impact and a positive, empowering experience. People with hobbies are the sign of a successful society. A sign of free time, and often overcoming difficulties in hobbies can translate to being able to overcome difficulties and problem solve in the workplace. Hobbies are a sign of prosperity that has been lost in this generation of the US at least. Degrowth is centered around both using less, but also needing less, and therefore having the money you want to spend on things that make you actually happy, and have more free time to do what you actually want to do. Unfortunately, in the US, hobbies that people do often require dropping a fortune on gear and equipment, because we must all own one of everything instead of an organized way to set things up. If you like to sew, you have to spend a ton on fabric and buttons, and keep your machine maintained. If you're a repair person or any kind of mechanical work, from bicycle repair, woodworking, or 3D printing, you have a bag or box of tools you have dropped a lot of money on. Many have collecting as a hobby that often started out in the early days as collecting natural specimens such as shells and butterflies to antiques, and then collecting hundreds of dollars sneakers and Beanie Babies, something you get little out of other than looking at them, but can rationalize because you are led to believe that it's an investment and they will pay for themselves in the future. A reason why I had to give away 4 of my 8 comic book boxes was because in my head I could rationalize forking over that kind of cash weekly, because they may have value in the future. Expensive comics are expensive because they were at one point viewed as basically disposable, and so their rarity is now ridiculous. Modern collectibles are not viewed as disposable, and in fact viewed as not even being able to touch, and therefore there will be many of them in the future. So let's look at the hobby of upcycling and the broader DIY. For this focus, if your community chooses it, you can focus on a number of forms of upcycling. The best, however, being able to buy the parts you need to upcycle in large numbers so you use up the pieces instead of having them sit around doing nothing in cookie tins till your grandkids throw them in the trash. With upcycling, you can use it as a way to make gifts, to give away at free cycle events, or as many do, create a whole business around it. The number one form of upcycling that probably reduces the most waste is clothing. Tons of clothing go into the landfill daily. There is a reason why fast fashion is vilified. Oddly, if you take care of it properly, fast fashion can last quite a long time, especially if it's a cut that no one else makes. The problem is how people use clothes. They often see all clothes as disposable, and so much clothing is worn a few times or even only once and then thrown away. The attitude of doing more with less when it comes to clothing is essential for Solarpunk, and if you feel you must change out your wardrobe often, clothing swaps and of course free cycling events are great ideas. A clothing library would be a great option if possible. Basically, if you do so right now, stop treating clothing as a consumable or hoardable good and start viewing it as a long-term investment. The entire attitude change around it needs to shift for many. After that, things like upcycling in terms of clothing, if you or your community knows how to sew, can begin. Buy $1 t-shirts from a thrift store that will end up in the landfill in a few months and upcycle them. So many ugly, unwanted clothes can be reworked into something cool. Torn clothing can be decoratively patched when they look like they were done on purpose. We've gotten away from using patches on otherwise perfectly good clothes because we can just buy another. Getting rid of all that consumerist mindset can open up your creativity. I enjoy cooking limitations because I can explore new avenues. I've tried vegan cooking even though I'm not vegan, and from it integrated new methods and substitutes I like better into my normal cooking. That same limitation of buying and consumerism can spark creativity and teach you new tricks you never knew. The internet is loaded with DIY and upcycling sewing. Treat upcycling like many currently treat a fashion mall, where they drop tons of money for something but they won't wear it again. One of the advantages of what is called the IKEA effect is that if you make it or modded it yourself, you will care about it and value it much more than if you just bought it. You will also have a bit more respect for the hardworking, drastically underpaid sweatshop laborers who created it and want to reduce buying from abusive businesses. Clothing upcycling is the most powerful because it takes something that would have been sent to the landfill, requires only a machine and thread, and can convert something useless and ugly into something awesome. It can also drastically change your mindset in relationship to clothing in general and appreciate what you have and the effort that went into making it. Better yet, if you can get together and work on a project together with a community, it will seem like even less of a chore and help you get out of your comfort zone. Knitters out there can also help with upcycling by getting sweaters and unraveling them for yarn. There are ways to do this right online. Same with crochet, and these just require needles, hooks, and know-how, and knitters' circles are everywhere. If you do need to buy new clothes, treat it like a long-term investment. Buy higher quality clothing from independent, sustainable manufacturers with higher durability. Buy it from a place that can fit it to you, so it looks better, and frequent local tailors for repairs and adjustments if your weight or shape changes. Fast fashion just cannot beat the look of a tailor-to-fit outfit, which will accent your best parts and looks crisp and sharp, increasing the time it takes for you to get bored of it. If you can, try to find pieces that you can mix and match, so you have to hang on to less, but it looks like you have a lot more variety of outfits. This is also a good option for wedding dresses, as most wedding dresses sit around forever as moth food. Buying 3 or 4 high-quality good pieces that you can layer together can allow you to mix and match them and still look amazing. Almost never ever bother to buy children's clothing unless you absolutely have to for financial reasons or very special occasions. Children grow so fast that any spending on new clothes is like lighting money on fire as quickly as they lose value to you. There is so much used children's clothing out there that finding something especially for younger children takes little to no effort at all. From this knowledge, you can actually craft and create solarpunk fashion and aesthetics all on your own. A lot of what could be solarpunk fashion would be clothing that reduces energy consumption for heating and cooling. In other words, many of the things people wore to keep warm or cool in pre-industrial times, and if you watch videos on the subject, you can see that many of the outfits that look hot were using fabric that naturally wicks sweat, such as linens, similar to smart fabrics, though these natural fibers can often be expensive. Cotton is probably one of the least natural solarpunk fibers, as it's not really great for heat regulation, especially if it gets wet. It's also incredibly harsh on the soil and requires a ton of fertilizers. Wool from sheep or alpaca, linen, bamboo, and hemp are some of the best if you can get a hold of them. These are also very durable, but also biodegradable, so they won't hang out in the landfill for centuries. Hemp is having some time reaching its stride because the US had decades when it was illegal to grow, but recently they have discovered enzymes that can make hemp work in cotton machines, which will hopefully allow for a seamless transition from cotton to hemp in the near future, where cotton is used drastically less. Solarpunk fashion will involve the return of hats, which is a lost fashion choice because cars and central air made them less needed. With less cars to protect you from the sun, hats will be needed more, though bike helmets are also pretty solarpunk and should probably not be modified as it could impact its brain protective properties. For keeping warm indoors so you can keep the heating down, keeping certain targeted areas warm can make you feel warm without swaddling you up. The key parts to keep warm are the core, hands, feet, neck, and head. In other words, vests are very solarpunk, as they were always meant for you to be able to wear clothing less and still stay warm. Buckwheat husks for warming can also be easily sewn into clothing, where you just pop the item in the microwave and you have your own personal heater. Slippers, wrist and ankle warmers, scarves, and yarmulke-like warmers you can put under your hat are all things you could sew buckwheat husks into for the same effect. A pad that warms the wrists and back of the hand could also be made, and then held in place via a decorative sock that can no longer be used because of holes and can be converted into a fingerless glove, especially when one needs precise use of their hands but can get cold fingers easily. These can stay warm for around an hour, and then you just need a recharge in the microwave. Experiment a bit with these and look up information online so you can prevent a potential burn hazard. Try to make these without using plastic or metal materials such as natural fibers and say wood buttons to reduce shedding microplastics or damaging them long term. After 2 to 3 years of use, the buckwheat hulls break down, so try and design it so it's easily refillable. For keeping cool in the summer, temples, neck, wrists, and ankles can be target points. And there are phase transition gels you can make with varying salts and xanthan gum, soaking scrap fabric in that you should be able to seal into shapes using vacuum seal freezer bags and plastic welders. I will have a video on this in the bottom. Depending on the recipe and process, you can even let it cool off in the freezer or just in a cool area like a basement, and the item will stay the same temperature for up to 2 hours depending on the mix. This is made possible as temperature can stay the same as the heat you let off is converted into energy needed to convert from solid to liquid. People are also experimenting with this tech for indoor insulation and have had some great success in energy saving and are now working to bring the cost down. You can currently buy neck rings and helmet liners with this property, and I'm hoping to increase my ability to bike to work from 90 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the point when my brain bakes and I'm stupid for around 2 hours as I recover from heat stroke. Oddly enough, Solarpunk fashion has a lot in common with steampunk, but only if you actually go for the real Victorian and Edwardian wear as opposed to the less historically accurate forms out there. There's been a long-standing joke around lazy, cheap steampunk where you just glue some gears on it and call it steampunk. The same seems to be true for tech bros greenwashing, where you slap some solar panels on it and call it solarpunk. Hopefully understanding this will help you avoid this trap. Other forms of upcycling and DIY, however, tend to use a lot of toxic materials to make something bound for the landfill both usable and enjoyable. It's still way better than the landfill, and allows art to be created, but make sure you follow safety and disposal precautions if you do. Paints, lacquers, strippers, resins, and adhesives can be used to resurface and rework ugly and dated items, especially furniture or home decor, and make it into not only something you might want in your house, but something marketable. The internet is loaded with these projects as well. There are also the upcycling videos that take literal trash and convert it into a temporary usable thing to extend its life. Many of these can actually be useful, but if you can, go as plastic or trash free as possible. There are also a ton of really bad upcycling and DIY hacks out there, created for clicks that are pretty terrible. Keep an eye out for these, but hopefully if done collectively, you can spot these even easier. Lastly is general DIY projects. These can involve woodworking, 3D printing, canning, CNC, laser cutting, Cricut, pottery, metalworking, glass blowing, jewelry making, and leatherworking. These can all integrate their own forms of upcycling, but also require a lot more tools and varieties of tools and materials needed than just a sewing machine and some scissors. In your community, see who can bring and share tools so that people don't have to own one of everything, especially if it's a tool used infrequently in the trade, but can simplify things for specific tasks. Also, so much paint and dyes go to waste, so if you can, figure out how to share unused colorants that can prevent creation of more toxic chemicals. If you can help build your community using the sustainable community methods involved, trust, social ties, and bonding can be very strong with these fun creative projects that can give you a sense of completion that are amazing for your psychology. Next up, we will discuss right to repair and how to get into repairing in general to prevent items that should be fine from getting thrown in the garbage and should now be able to be used by yourself or someone else. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you wish to be a part of this project, or want your Solarpunk art displayed discussing any of our main points of focus, please send everything to solarpunkusa@proton.me. There is also a Patreon link for my main channel if you like what I'm doing. For the first section involving community building, this channel will be run directly by myself. After that point, I hope to make this a collaborative project with many people involved, including voice, information, and editing to make this a robust channel that can spread and grow.